Okay, I think we're live. Hi, Simon. How are you
Hi,
today?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm very happy to welcome you to our Facebook Live interview. We had a bit of a summer break that we haven't lasted a little bit too long. So I'm really happy to welcome you to our Facebook Live and to learn more about you. So maybe tell us how you became an English teacher.
A little bit of a long story, really. But it was we lived in England, of course, and my wife's Polish. We always thought about coming back to Poland, and I thought, what shall I do when I move to Poland? And so about 6 years ago, we decided, oh, okay, let's try and do the TEFL certificate and everything like that. And I did that and started off in England because I had a lot of Polish people who worked at the company where I worked at. So I did a little bit there, and then one day we just decided, okay, it's time to move, and I moved, and we haven't looked back really. So it's been quite good, better than I thought it was going to be.
Okay, so tell us a little bit more about your background, like before you were an English teacher.
Okay, so before I was in manufacturing, production wise, I was an operations manager for a big bakery in the UK, and for 18 years, really. And then I moved from there to a smaller company, with an unusual name, and it's called BUMF, BWMF. And they made personalized greeting cards and things like that. But we also printed pictures onto marshmallows that you could send as a birthday present. So my claim to fame is, of course, the company was owned by James Middleton, who was Kate Middleton's brother.
Oh, sorry, I
So
don't know all the royal family here.
okay, and so the claim to fame is we had the Prince George walking around the factory once, so it was quite good. Yeah,
Nice, nice. So
yeah.
where were you located in England?
Uh, in Berkshire, in the south of England, basically, in this area. So it was a long way from home. It was 160 miles from where I used to live. So I used to go on a Monday and come back on a Friday until we decided to move. But it was okay. But when you're away from family and all week and living out of a suitcase, sometimes it's not so good.
Right,
Really.
right. So what do you think your business experience is bringing to your lessons with your students?
I think the good thing about it is a lot of interview skills because through over my years I interviewed a lot of people, and the different ways of doing interviews, and depending on the job that you're going for, of course, we all use the standard basic HRE type of interviews, but then when it comes to technical questions and understanding um, prospective, how can I say, interviewees, we you have this little bit extra that you can give them as well to put them at ease before they go into an interview, and also manufacturing experience, a HR experience, and things like that. So that comes quite good,
Yes,
especially with business English students, for instance.
right. You can understand your students on their business level and bring the vocabulary and have a discussion at their level.
Of course, and that's anything from a CEO of a company through to, shall we say, second management, for instance. And I tend to get a lot of students which are around this area, so it's really good, and you can have a really good conversation. So it makes you feel like how can I say, not a teacher, but a real person in a way.
Right. What do you like about teaching?
I think it's the number of different people that you meet from all different backgrounds. I've met people from who worked on pieces for the Mars robot that went to Mars, down to people who make ice cream. So it's quite diverse, the number of people that you see and that you meet at any one time. So it's really good. And of
Right.
course, all through the pandemic, we met a lot of more people than we would normally, and you manage to have some really good conversations with them as well. So
Right.
I think as a teacher, I've developed a lot by meeting all these different people. So.
Right. You were mentioning the pandemic. I think the world discovered Zoom, and it's really. I mean, sometimes we have enough of all this online stuff because we want to meet real people, but at the same time, I'm so grateful that it happened at this time, at this period where we have the tools to communicate. Because imagine how we would be in a different period of time where didn't have all these programs or apps to communicate to people around the world. So I think
I can remember when you had to write a letter.
Right.
Before we had these things as emails and things like that. So right back to the very first computer that I had at home and trying to work out how you sent an email to somebody or something like that.
What do you think are the main differences between teaching on Zoom and teaching in a one-on-one, more traditional way?
I think more in a traditional way. You get it. You can be, how can I say, a bit more. You can personalize your lessons a little bit more. You can put things across in a much better way, because I think when people actually see you face to face, they feel more at ease. Whereas
I tend to disagree with you, because I mean, it's true that being in the same room with someone, you have a relationship that develops differently. But at the same time, I remember when we started Live English 15 years ago, we had a lot of students who preferred to be online because they were too shy and they were too embarrassed with their English. And the fact that there was this distance was making them a little bit more comfortable speaking.
I agree with you. Yes, I agree in that way. But I think more personalized by having a face to face. You do also find students. I totally agree that students who get a little bit embarrassed or things like that, they won't use the camera, for instance.
Right.
And of course they're okay. But after 2 or 3 lessons, especially when you're working with students who are, again, doing interview skills, for instance, after 2 or 3 lessons, it's good to be able to get the camera on with them as well. So it puts them in that more of a pressured situation.
Absolutely. You were mentioning also interviews, and a lot of interviews are done online nowadays. So it's also good to get used to the tools and the way to present yourself on the camera.
Of course, yes, and of course we have so many different ways of communicating with them, especially online tools as Zoom, Google Meet, Teams, Skype, Messenger, WhatsApp. We have the list is endless.
Right.
But you also find some students find difficulty in using one application, but another application is perfect for them, for instance.
Right. Yes. Somehow some apps work better in some countries, or they're more popular than, they don't want to download other apps.
Of course. Yeah.
So when we look at the way we teach at Live English, we put a lot of emphasis on the study box. How do you work with the study box? What do you find it useful for our students?
My students always comment that they find it very useful, and they're forever sending me the link prior to the lesson to be able to use and things like that. And I think it's quite good, because for a lower level student to be able to read with them and correct the pronunciation as we're going through and help them with the vocabulary if they don't understand the words. But then also for the further advanced student, for that student to be able to read it before the lesson and then summarize the article to you, because then you see that they've actually understood the article, and also they have to use their own vocabulary and build their own sentences, use the correct grammar and things like that. And a lot of, as I say, the upper intermediate students that I teach, they like to do it that way as well. They like to summarize the article and go through it. They've read the article. I know the article they're using, and we summarize it. They find their own words, and we have to work on the pronunciations depending on the country, of course, of where they come from. And you find that in some countries, some students from the north of a country, the pronunciation is not as good as students from the south of the country, for instance.
Right. So anyway, with you, they can learn a good British accent. That's the way you speak, and they can imitate you and learn from that. Do you think it's a good idea to have teachers to have a couple of teachers, to have teachers from different nationalities to get a feel for the language?
I think so. A lot of students like to have British English, of course, and American English. They like the two, and again, depending on should we say the job the student does, or whether they travel a lot or anything like that. But then you also get the student who would just prefer to have a British English, or you get the student who prefer to have an American English. But when I have evaluations with students, I also tell them that we have teachers from all over the world, basically, right the way down to South Africa, and we have Australians and British and American teachers in Mexico and things like that. So mainly, I suppose that's more for the timelines and things like that. So.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a good idea to have teachers from different countries, because we live in an international environment nowadays. So we don't know who we're going to meet, and having lessons with a British teacher, you can learn about how they deal with things, how they speak. And when you have an American teacher, you can really feel the difference, not just with the language and the accent, but also the way people see the world. It's I think it's quite obvious when you.
Of course,
Yeah.
and of course, British English. We have so many different accents as well. With just British English, I think it's 67 different accents across the British Isles as it is.
Wow.
So it's from Cockney to Scouse to Geordie, as we say.
What is it?
So we have the Cockney people who live around the London area, or within the sound of Bow Bells, they say, which are the bells of one of the areas. We have the Scouse accent, which comes from the Liverpool area. We have the Geordie from Newcastle upon Tyne, but then we also have a lot of other accents as well. Birmingham, the Brummie, and how can I say? Yeah, and I always say the further south you go, the clearer the language becomes. So
right, and that's only talking about England. When you talk about the UK in general, you have really a lot of diversity, and some people are easier to understand than others.
Well, even for me in England, some of the accents I can't understand. And my wife's Polish. The first time she heard the Scouse accent, she thought they were speaking German. So it's
yeah, well, I lived in Ireland for a while, and it was like we did some trips to Northern Ireland. It was like, wow, that was a challenge for me. Yeah. Very challenging. I mean, and Scotland. Oh, that's a different language altogether.
But they also have their own language as well, the Gaelic as well.
So right, the Irish, yes.
Yeah. So it's quite quite we're quite a diverse. How can I say? It's quite a diverse world.
Absolutely, and also, the as you said, within the UK, you have like every city has its own culture and its own language, and I think through the lessons, even if you only want to learn with teachers from the UK, it's also good to have teachers from different parts of the UK, because if you do business in England, you don't know where they're from, if they're more from London or from another city. So,
of course, and not just in the UK. You can go around London and see an international population more than anything, and especially with the businesses around the UK as well.
Right, right. I remember having a lunch with some friends from the US, American friends, and suddenly there were like two people talking together. They were both from New York, and this guy was like, "You are from Brooklyn," and the other was like, "You're from the Queens." Like really, even like within the same city, you had different accents in like depending on the neighborhood you were from. Is it the same in England? Like if you're in London, for example, would you have I don't know some accents within the city?
Yeah, it can be from if you pinpoint the middle of the city and then work your way out. Yes, my grandparents were from London, and my grandfather spoke with quite a strong Cockney accent. And of course, within this accent, there's a lot of slang as well. They have their own slang of, up the apples and pears, so up the stairs and things like that. So it was quite difficult. And with living in that area for a time, you actually took on the accent. And then as I moved away, because I lived in the northwest of England for a number of years, you slowly lost that accent. But
Right.
whenever I went to London and spent a few days there, then I would come home and I'd be talking like a
And
Cockney.
it comes back.
So, yeah, so it's amazing how it does come back. So.
Right. So now you're in Poland. What do you feel about? Are you learning Polish? Like, do you? How do you feel about living in a foreign country? Is it difficult?
It's not difficult because it's a lot easier from what I used to do. I used to manage 300 and how many people on a daily basis within the factory, and along with managers and everything as well. So it was quite stressful and quite fast. And here it's kind of I work from home. I have a classroom here in an office, and if I want a day off, I can just have a day off. When I've booked it correctly with my students, and if I need to go and do something, I can do. Whereas when you're in a factory environment, it's like you're enclosed, and from 6 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night, you can't move outside of that fence and things like that. So my Polish is yes. Without my wife shouting at me that I've been here for 3 years and I haven't learned a lot of Polish, you tend to understand a lot of words because you hear them quite often, and then you tend to add the other words in between to be able to make it so that you do understand. But I can go to the shops and do what I need to do, and to the
Right.
I don't know,
And
petrol
and you
station.
probably rely on your wife for important things in Polish.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. If we have to go and do anything, yeah, official, should we say? And for instance, we built our house and we moved in to the house just before the pandemic, which was great because we've got a very big garden and a forest not far from us. And previously, we lived in an apartment. And I think if I'd had to go through the situation from March the 14th, as it was, and now in an apartment, yeah, I think it would have gone stir crazy. So. It was,
Okay, well, Simon, it was really nice talking to you. I think it's very interesting to see another side of our teachers. That's why I like having these Facebook Live. Then we can learn a little bit more, just not about your teaching, but above the teaching, more about yourself. And I think it's always very interesting. So thank you for your time. Thanks for sharing with us your thoughts on England, on Poland, and many different other things. And we're going to continue with these Facebook Live on a weekly basis. So next week we'll have another guest. And until then, I say I wish you a very good day.
thank you.
Bye bye.
And to you. Bye bye. Bye bye.